And in some ways, and you kind of said this, it is a gift. I mean, not necessarily the circumstances that we walk through at times are a gift, but it is a gift in the sense of it gives us an opportunity to face some things that unless we have to, we don't naturally go there.
Yeah. And I think that's what it's the perspective shift that's happened. No matter what happens in the future, it's like I've seen now the beauty of the balance of that, or the quiet and stillness of that, to be like, now going forward, I know what that looks like from both ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're like, I know what it feels like to be all on this one thing, and I know what it feels like to be all and without anything. Right. So now going forward, like having a balance, not even a balance of the two, but having a perspective of things. Oh, that's good. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Hi, friend. I'm Susan Beth, and you are listening to the She Is podcast, where we talk about living life intentionally and about trusting that the desires you have deep within you are there for a reason. I believe that the creator of the universe put those desires within you and that they are pathways to your purpose. My desire is that this would be a space that encourages you to lean in and to hear the whispers of the divine, and that you would be reminded of things that I honestly believe you already know. That you, my friend, are here for a reason. So if you're here for more conversations in that kind of space, welcome. Let's go.
Hey, so glad you are here today. And for this Thursday episode, I have a special treat for you, and it is my eldest daughter, Erica Morris-Diaz. So excited she's here today. A few months ago, just to give you a little background, we got into this conversation about something. And after like a day or so later, I texted her and said, hey, can we do an episode around what we were talking about? And I was so happy that she agreed to do that.
Reluctantly at first.
Yeah.
I said, are you sure?
But she agreed to do it. So she's here today, and we'll get more into that conversation. But first, before we get into that, Erica, would you just give everybody that's listening just a little snapshot of what is filling your days in this season?
Yeah. I'm a mom of 3, a wife. I'm homeschooling a kindergartner.
Fun.
Managing a strong-willed toddler, following behind a busy baby. So our days are filled with lots of play and reading books and art and crafts. And in any spare time I have, I do help my husband in managing his own business. And then as of recently, I am now teaching dance in the evenings. And I will get to the why it's as of recently part in this episode.
Yep. Well, as you know, because hopefully you listen to the podcast as my daughter.
Religiously.
No, I know you do. I talk a lot about seasons, and I know you work through the seasonal journal. And so a lot of our conversations are around sometimes what the week is focusing on that week. And this past week was talking about letting things fall away. And I was just going to read some of that because I feel like even in me asking you to have this conversation, this was some of the thoughts that were in my mind. So this is actually the weekly focus for the week I'm in the autumn seasonal journal. And the weekly focus title is Letting Things Fall Away. So it says, even though change is oftentimes needed and a necessary part of life, it isn't always an easy process. There is a comfort we experience with the familiar. We fight to hang on to life choices and circumstances, even when the season has run its course, because it's what we know. The season of autumn is a powerful reminder that there's beauty in letting things fall away, trusting that the letting go opens up our hearts and our hands for new growth. And I feel like that goes with the conversation we had that day.
Yes.
I think you had just come back from some kind of homeschool field trip with some of the kids. And I think I was watching maybe the baby or one of the younger ones at the house. And you were kind of filling me in on different people you were meeting and how the field trip went. And in the conversation, and talking about meeting the new people, the conversation went to people asking, or, you getting to know new people.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember it kind of hitting me in a, I don't want to say weird way, but felt kind of proud because I knew probably, well, let me say that. I don't know. I kind of got from you that you weren't feeling like maybe I had thought you might be feeling, because you're meeting new people. And what we were talking about was you were showing up exactly who you were right now, that day, in that season, And so I think that's what was impactful to me, to hear that you felt no need to be like, hey, here's my resume from the last decade. And, all the things that you've accomplished and spent so much time doing. It's like they had no clue. Yeah. And I remember maybe even asking you kind of like, oh, I think I did. I think I was like, they don't know that you ran a studio for like a decade or any of these things. And you were like, nope. Like, you're showing up with your kids and talking about them. And if something goes a certain directions, it's not like you're hiding anything.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess it just gave me a glimpse. And like I said, it did make me feel proud in the sense of, I just saw you were showing up in that moment on a foundation and the layers of your life that had got you to that moment, but you weren't feeling any kind of way about it. I mean, not that there weren't some ways you felt about some stuff, but it's like you were comfortable in who you were, and not that doesn't involve dealing with other stuff. But in that moment, it's like you didn't have to read your resume off to feel like you were worthy of getting to know and being present in that moment and forming new relationships and all that. So it was just a beautiful picture of your identity and knowing who you were. And obviously, I know that that's rooted in God and a confidence that He's holding your seasons. But it's like, I don't know. I just felt proud as your mom that you were able to do that and be present and enjoy the moment and be meeting new people and feel good about that.
Yeah. Going back to your autumn reading, I don't know if I've always been this way, but I think I have. I really don't resist change that much. I don't feel like, and
okay.
I mean, like, if I look back at seasons of my life, I feel like I know this is not a very common thing, but I really don't feel like I fight change that much. Yeah. I don't. I think it's exciting to me almost, even if it's a negative. But I feel like it is like, okay, what can evolve and come out of this? Yeah. And like you said, in no way am I avoiding any kind of like pain or heartache at all. I actually I won't say love, but I can sit in that and like feel all the things, because I know how it feels when you get to the other side of something. Yeah. And that goes back to even like teenagehood too, because you do experience a lot of like ebb and flow of like who you are or becoming who you are, or like just all the things you deal with as becoming like a person.
Yeah. Right.
And so I can like in my mind and in my body remember how that felt to be like, as soon as I get through this transformation, I know this is what's on the other side of it. Yeah. So then like, I feel like that helped me in adulthood because even as a family, we've gone through different circumstances and things, and we've witnessed things and like grew through things. So I knew this is going to eventually be a positive thing.
Right.
Even though it is really hard right now and it's really hurtful and it's really confusing or there's heartache. So I feel like I can kind of ride that roller coaster easier than maybe the statistic of people. Yeah. Which can be, I think it's a blessing kind of to feel all the things. Like it's a blessing and a curse is what I'm trying to say, is to feel all the things. But yeah, to what you said, it was hard to show up and be like, okay, this was my whole life that people don't know about. Do I want to just start off being like, well, this is what I did, but I'm not now, blah, 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 blah. Or to be like, yeah, hi, I'm Erica and I have 3 kids and here we are, and just like start from scratch. Yeah. And it is exciting in a way of being like, this is a new leaf. This is a new season. This is a new chapter. So I did just fall into that. Yeah. But after just a business, I had spent 12 years pouring like my whole heart and soul into, and like my passion of life. And with unforeseen circumstances, that just ending very suddenly, that was literally every day for me. Like every day, even if I wasn't going to every day, I was doing something at my home for it every day.
Right.
Like in some capacity, that was my life.
Yes.
Even if I was at home with my kids, that was taking all of my energy, my time, even away from my kids, because even if I wasn't physically there, I was mentally there and working on something for that. So my whole life was built around this. My identity was built around this. And like you said, yes, I do find my identity in God. And you and Dad are a huge like portion of why I do, because that's what we were trained to do. Like, this is where you find your identity. You guys were calling that out of us our whole childhood. Like, here's your giftings, here's your callings. So I know that for me personally, my identity wasn't just wrapped up in like, oh, this is who I am. Yes, my life was built around it. But then at the end of the day, if all of that crumbles, I do know who I am as a person. And who God has called me to be, regardless of how that's being used.
Yes.
So,
no, and let me say, as a parent, I know that, but yet I also know that navigating that out in day-to-day life, we do so many things out of habit. I didn't doubt that was a secure foundation in your identity, but yet walking that out and dealing with that on a practical level, it is something you have to think about when you're so used to being like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
You know, a title.
Yeah.
And people, you know what I'm saying?
And
being
people
a leader.
knew me in a certain environment only. There were so many people that only knew me in that capacity.
Right.
So it's almost like, you're kind of getting to know me because you only saw me in this one role.
Yeah, right.
So removing like a role or a title and just like who you are at your core is completely different.
Yeah. And in some ways, and you kind of said this, it is a gift. I mean, not necessarily the circumstances that we walk through at times are a gift, but it is a gift in the sense of it gives us an opportunity to face some things that unless we have to, we don't naturally go there.
No,
you know, and it's like when you are in those moments of that you can't revert back to that familiar, that brings comfort, because you didn't really have to think about how you were showing up in one sense. Well, I mean, you did in one sense, but you were a leader and people looked to you in a certain way. And so you were in that flow of doing that. And when that stops, it's like you're having to rethink, who am I? Every time you're walking out the door, every time you're meeting the new person, and even in your family.
Yeah, even that's the first thought that came to my mind is like, I think I struggled more at home than out, because I was like, I went from feeling like I was doing so much. And pouring out so much to being like, now you're just going to the mundane. And like, now you're just washing dishes all day and doing laundry and changing diapers. And like, you could be doing so much more. But like, that was a huge shift for me mentally of being like, becoming a servant in my own home. Rather than like out where people could see it. Because I didn't feel like it was important.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh, y'all wouldn't survive in here without me. No, not even that, but not like that, but even just like my work at home with my kids and my husband is just as important. And all those small moments are just as important as like these grandiose things.
Right.
You know? Or like what you're saying and doing to other people and putting on shows and doing events and speaking into other people's lives. It's just as important in your everyday simple moments. Absolutely. But like, I always have been like this, looking for the big, like, oh, we have this big thing coming up. We have this big event. We have this big show, and it's going to be like, God's going to be in this and blah, 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 blah. And being like, he's in the little tiny moments with my little kids.
God's going to be in this dish soap right now.
I mean, but like, God meets us where we're at, because I'm like, he has to, because I'm not really at much, you know what I mean? Like, so that was a really beautiful season. Those, I would say, almost 2 years, just a very beautiful season of a lot of nothingness, seemingly nothingness. Right. It was seemingly, but it was everything. Because I wouldn't even be in the season I am now if I didn't have that season. Right. Of feeling like this was just a waste of like a year and a half or two of like, I didn't do anything. Now I feel like I might even qualified enough to even go do something else because I haven't been doing anything. Whereas actually I gained my clarity and my peace of mind. I got back my peace and my clarity and reset, refocus, reshift to now be able to go do whatever that is. You know, like honestly, I'm still not very like, what is that? I don't know. I know what I'm doing right now in this moment, but I'm meaning like, it's not like, okay, now this, you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
life.
It's just like a constant redirect.
Yeah. That's life. I don't know if it was last week or the week before that the focus was about layers. And I did an episode talking about that. And that's what I see as I'm hearing you talk too, that I've seen in my own life. I mean, life is just these layers that we live and that we learn and we grow. And sometimes a layer can be like, feel hidden and what am I doing? And when you were saying that about feeling like you were doing nothing, I think if you would have asked during that time, okay, so like when you were still running the studio, if somebody would ask you, you would have said, my home and my family's the most important thing in my life. You know what I'm saying? You would have said that.
Yes.
And that's what the point I was making a minute ago, because we can say a lot of things that we know to be the truth, but it's like, do we really believe that? Because, we do struggle then when that is, well, so do you really believe this is the most important? Because here's where I have you. Here's where I want you to have peace and to grow. And so that's why I was saying it is sometimes a gift, because we would not deal with those things.
Yeah.
We would not really be able to see the beauty of what you're saying to be true. You know that to be true now.
Yeah. And I think that's what it's the perspective shift that's happened. No matter what happens in the future, it's like I've seen now the beauty of the balance of that, or the quiet and stillness of that, to be like, now going forward, I know what that looks like from both ends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're like, I know what it feels like to be all on this one thing, and I know what it feels like to be all and without anything. So now going forward, like having a balance, not even a balance of the two, but having a perspective of things. Oh, that's good. You know?
Yeah.
So.
No, that's good.
And going back to what you said about when I was meeting new people, like after, the business just came crumbling down around me and I was like, what am I doing with my life now? It was like, I guess I got more into homeschooling, like Ayla started kindergarten. So that got us into different groups and activities where the people I was meeting was a totally different circle of people that didn't know me from my business or in the community, because we were in a certain area of town and like everyone knew our business, not our business, but like our studio and us as people. And so this was like a whole different part of the city, a whole different pool of people. So like I did battle in my mind, even though I was confident with like who I was as a person, I did battle in my mind, like when you're meeting people and they're like, so what do you do? Like going back and forth, being
question.
Like, what do you lead with? I had to ask myself, like, what are you going to lead with?
That's a good question.
Like what I do or what I have done, or my strengths and my accomplishments, or just being like, just rest in like people seeing me as who I am.
Yeah.
Because previously it would be like, oh my gosh, you run your own business? Wow. You are so young, like a young woman that owns her own business with her family. Or you're an entrepreneur, that's so cool. So it's like you rest on those laurels, and that does bring you confidence of like, oh wow, like, this is a thing. And I feel very proud of it. So it is like a pride thing. Then to be like, okay, that's removed. Now, how do you introduce yourself? That's not the starter. Of like, this is what I do. Not that I was bragging.
Diapers. Times a day.
Well, I mean, most of the time I was in good company, because you're in circles of people that are doing the same thing, but also like you meet a lot of different people that are like, you're just stay-at-home mom, or you're a working mom, or you're a little bit of both. So it was like after 12 years of saying the same thing though, it's hard to be like, how do you answer that question? Because
and there was security. You said this about pride. There was a security in that too, because you knew what would be coming back. You know what I'm saying? And you immediately when you said stuff, the affirmation that was coming back to you. Which that's why I think it's so tied into our identity and how that can so shake us at times when something shifts in our life. That's so huge.
And also what the thought I had was, of course, I didn't answer that question perfectly. And I will say, the more I developed friendships, like I definitely filled new friends in on like, this is what I was doing previously and this is what happened. Or these are things that have happened and these are the seasons I've gone through. So it's not like this was a secret. But for like acquaintance and new people that I was meeting, I definitely was like, hey, you're looking at it. Like, this is what it is. Like, I'm showing up. This is what we're doing. Nature trails and arts and crafts and like, you know, managing meltdowns. Or there were days when someone would be like, what do you do? And I'm like, you know, choking back tears and trying to like get the right answer or be like, sorry, that wasn't a good time to ask me. It's really fresh. And then there was like later weeks where I'd be like, oh, you know, like I'm homeschooling my kids and I'm a stay-at-home mom, blah, 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 blah. Now it's a little bit different. Like it's changed multiple times in the last 3 years how I would answer that question based on like my emotional state and my confidence.
Right.
But you know, as time has gone on, what I relate it to and how we present ourselves is like even our walk as a Christ follower is we're presenting who we are versus what we do. And I think that is so tied to the acts of service and acts that we try to do as like Christians.
Yes.
To be like, prove that we are that versus like just who we are.
Right.
And resting in like the spiritual gifts that we have or the strengths that we have in our own characters and the things that are attributes of God versus this is what I do or this is what I did.
Yeah. And that's hard to separate. For a lot of us at times, you know?
Yeah. And that's just a thought I had when I was just like, how do you present Erica? Not what Erica did, just who Erica is.
Right.
And then I was just like, wow, this is very closely tied to our faith walk.
It is.
And like what we present to people and what we're involved in versus how we treat people.
Yeah.
And how we listen to people and how we encourage people versus, you know, our ministry or how many times we served or where we show up.
But I think that goes back to the whole way that we as believers have separated, which I don't think was ever intended, you know, the sacred and the secular, you know, I mean, our life is our life and we're not believers part of the time when we're doing believer Christian Christ-like thing. I mean, hopefully we're doing Christ-like things all the time, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, God never intended for us to live this separate life where now we're putting on our Christian hat.
Yeah.
And it's all tied together. And sometimes life, when we don't feel that of how together it is till we are walking out these moments. And it's like, you see that of, wow, this is all connected. And like when you get to this bare minimum of everything with stuff stripped away, and it's like, you're seeing life bare. And also like exactly what you're saying, if you're in different circles of people, like you could be the only example of something that they see. Like even me going through an experience in a season of life and then me trying to present the best part of that would never maybe help, encourage, or bless someone else if I was trying to make it sound better than it was. Because then they couldn't relate to it. So if I'm like actually real and raw with the season of life I went through and I'm trying to make it prettier than it is, they might even I will miss the opportunity of connecting with them and building a relationship with them. That could be a positive thing because I'm trying to make it pretty. Instead of being like, no, this was really rough and it still is. And they'd be like, I can really relate to that. Or like, thank you for sharing that. That's exactly what I'm going through right now. Wow. No, that's good. And I can remember, and I'm the queen of wanting to present, you know, this being raised by me, you know, presenting the, okay, you've got it all together kind of picture. And I can remember a rough season of church-wise of losing a facility and, you know, continuing to meet and having to show up in a different place. And I can remember, and again, it was a hard place, but it was also a beautiful place of knowing, God, you're enough. But I remember that first Sunday standing up and saying to the people because it goes to exactly what you were saying. I think we do a disservice where we try to spiritualize everything and put the nice little verse over it. And that was a season of my life where I kind of got over that because that was very easy for me. I knew when somebody came up to me and had a need or was crying, and not that I didn't care, but it's like I knew the verse to say.
Yeah.
I was right there what to say, to pray with them and to comfort them. And it's like walking through that season for me, I thought differently about that. And I just remember that Sunday standing up and looking at the people and saying, if we're an example of anything, I didn't want to slap a fancy verse over it. I said, if we're an example of anything, it's that we love God and we're an example of things don't work out sometimes, and we're still going to keep on going.
Because people need to see the humanness in other people. When you're like always on, or you do have the perfect answer for everything, it's so unrelatable to people that need to either confide in you or get encouragement, because people do want to feel like the humanness and rawness from somebody, especially people that they want to hear from, of being like, you relate to this and you feel it with me, instead of giving like the perfect
you're right. I think it's an illusion that when you're in leadership, you can think feel, that. You feel then that pressure. But no, you're right. I mean, everybody wants, at the end of the day, authentic and real. And there's times you get to your life and it's like, that's all you got to give. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I got a hug for you. I can't muster up any fakeness right now. And again, let me say, not that my love was fake or not genuine at any time, but it's like, you're digging from a different well. And when you walk through deep, hard things, it's like things feel different and look differently. And God shows up differently in a different way. And that's going to be reflected. I mean, you have the choice to reflect that in a different way to those that are around you, I think.
Yeah. So absolutely. Yeah. And when you're in those low seasons and like life just feels like crazy and chaotic and crumbling all around you, like they are necessary seasons and growing seasons for like your character. And for me, it was so necessary of just having this like quiet, nothing, unrushed, like painfully quiet season, because there were moments where I was like, oh, I could go do this to like fill that pain. Fill it, like FILL. Yeah. Like fill it and just like avoid certain things, to be like, I could jump into this to kind of like replace what I just lost. But I feel like it was such a necessary season to relearn how to show up differently and better and or just different, not even better, just like a different version of you and who you are, and like filling yourself up to become like the next level or next version of what you need to be in the next season. But I could have very easily replaced that loss with a million other things, and I intentionally chose. And there were definitely like things that I had to turn down too. People that were trying to help me fill that and be like, oh, you could do this, or I could help you with this and whatever. And they were like amazing ideas and they were awesome. And I was like, no, I just don't even feel like that's where I need to be right now. I feel like I need to be in a place of just like, just stopping completely.
No, I remember us having a lot of conversations around that. And it was it was a hard time, but there was this piece to stop and to rest and to not rush or move forward with anything. And so definitely, I remember that of lots of opportunities, because you did have a reputation for things, and the studio had a reputation, and there were lots of opportunities or invitations coming at you. And I can remember that of just having a peace and a calm of like, no, I don't understand, don't have all the answers right now, but it goes back to my theme verb, be still and know. You know what? As in of trusting God with the not knowing in the middle of the season, but knowing, okay, I've got you.
I think another thing is like, that's exactly how I felt, because I think sometimes it's easy to think that when you have peace that you should feel really great about everything. And that's not the case.
Right.
And I remember saying that to people, like, I just have a peace that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that might have been hard for other people to understand, to be like, your world is literally falling apart around you. Like, I did feel immense peace, but I also felt immense pain. And I think that sometimes we're like, oh, I feel peace about this. You can say that and think that that means the absence of hurt and pain. Of like, I feel peace and hope about this situation. Well, like, I felt both at the same time.
I think I'm thinking of that scripture that says, peace that passes
Oh,
human
yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you
Yeah.
can't explain that. I
Yeah.
mean, when you're in the midst of those kind of times,
Mhm.
you can't, it makes no sense to have
Mhm.
peace.
Yeah. And I remember saying to certain people, like, I will have peace if I know that I am supposed to be doing these things.
Mhm.
And it felt very conflicting to my spirit because I knew that I was just supposed to be still for a long time, which like I said, I think it's been almost a couple of years of just not doing anything. Now we've transitioned to a different season where we're adding more things. I say not doing anything similar to what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, you were a little bit. I mean, you were still connected to some things you had going on that kind of continue. But but obviously that's, I think you're saying nothing because the scale and the time commitment was totally different. So I get why you're saying nothing, but
yeah, thank you for clarifying that. No, I wasn't not doing anything, but yes, compared to the capacity of like, or the scale of it and what was all involved. Yeah. It did almost feel like this is nothing. Yeah. But yes, there were things that were going on behind the scenes that were more low key that I could have been adding and adding and adding to get back up to that level. And I didn't. Yeah. Because I didn't feel right about that. Yeah. Like I felt like I needed to have that just like emptiest season. Mm-hmm.
No, and we'll end with this because that I think is a huge thing that I think it was one of the last episodes I kind of touched on, that I can see such growth in my life that, like you said, not that you don't have days where you get to a place where that peace is holding you and it's true and it's real and you don't have all the answers and you're okay with that. And I wasn't always in that place in my life. You know, it's like I couldn't have complete peace without seeing a path or knowing the answers or that felt frustrating to me. So it was hard for me not to have some level of anxiousness or anxiety without some kind of game plan. So even if it didn't come, it's like, I'm going to feel anxious to try to come up with a game plan. So in this season that you're referring to, there wasn't a game plan. And it was like, there was a piece to not have the game plan. And so I want those listening today to hear that, because you might be in a place where you're feeling stuck and you're not seeing what the next month, the next, year, next 5 years holds for you. And that's causing some anxiety. And I want to encourage you and invite you to trust God with your season. Because when we walk through difficult times, He doesn't check out. And I think that's why I can walk through seasons differently. And like what you even said at the beginning, that you've learned after walking through things, that it's like you can have that peace and that trust level is different, that you said it's almost a gift. It feels different because you've seen God walk through the seasons with you and get to another side. But here's the thing. When I say get to another side, you're going to get to the other side and then you're going to walk through some other stuff. And I think that is the thing we need to understand, that in this life, this is our life. And you even alluded to this, though, as believers, it's like, how are we going to walk through it? Right. Are we only be positive and happy and want to praise and speak those things when life looks great and it feels easy? No, I mean, that's not what life is. And yes, we all desire those times, but it's like, then when we do look at things, the times that we do have the most growth, and we're sitting here having this conversation out of a painful circumstance that has brought so much growth. And when we allow God to show up in our seasons and we trust Him, it is amazing. And to look back and to see how, as we just continue walking in faith and trusting Him, even when we don't see how it's going to turn out, we'll look back and go, oh, wow, look at this door that opened. Look how you led me here that I didn't necessarily pursue. I was just following. I was just showing up today, being obedient and showing up where I was at. Changing the diaper, washing the dishes, putting, just doing the next right thing that was in front of you and trusting God with your life, in the last 6 months, a year, the things then that have opened up for you, you didn't even know were available or a possibility. Right. Some of the people and the relationships that God's brought into your life, you didn't even know them.
And I wouldn't have if that hadn't happened.
No.
Even though it was devastating loss of relationships as well. There's relationships I don't even have because life has shifted so much or the circles have changed and stuff like that. So it is just like a brand new rebirth in multiple ways.
Right.
And connections and relationships and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, but it's just a beautiful example of trusting God with the season and seeing how he's faithful for that to unfold when you've trusted him with that. And even how life looks right now, 6 months, a year from now, it's just like, it doesn't stop, you know? And so it's like,
different next week.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, that's exciting in the sense of just to continue to grow and for God to open up the doors he wants to open and trusting him for the growth and what he's doing in your life and not having to have all the answers and figure that out.
Yeah.
And I've seen you walking that out. And two, I see his hand in it. And you mentioned this with your family and your kids. I mean, it's aside from the business and running a business, second child that was very young when all this happened and it added another baby. I mean, around the same time, then you were pregnant. And it's like, that's been a gift in itself for you as a wife and a mom to be present in a different way.
Yes, definitely. Well, that side note too, after all that happened with the business, I found out I was pregnant like not even a month after. So it was a very like...
You were actually pregnant.
Yeah. It was hard. Well, I say it's hard. It's looking back, it's crazy now because it's like all this is kind of dying around you, but you're growing new life. So it's kind of like almost just like a promise or like a hope.
Yeah.
As that was happening, like you're carrying a new life, but then all this around you on the outside is like devastating.
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, that pregnancy was exactly when I needed it, even though I was not planned or like I wouldn't have probably chose to be pregnant right then. Looking back, I'm like, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Like it was perfect timing.
Yeah. And what a little gift he is. He's precious. Get ready to turn 1. So, well, thank you for having the conversation with me.
No, thank you.
On the record.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. And I think it will be encouraging because everybody is walking through something or will walk through something. And, I believe that it'll be an encouragement to trust and surrender your season fully and trust him that he's with you in the middle of it and walking with you through it. And there's joy, can be joy in the midst of it and, where he's leading and to trust him with that. So thank you for sharing who you are. You're loved. I love you and proud of you.
Thank you.
Hey, you. Thanks for listening. And if you would like to connect more, head over to SusanBeth.com and sign up, and you will be one of the first to find out about anything new. Plus, there's a special free download available just to say thanks. If something in this episode did speak to you, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend that you think it might resonate with as well? And until next time, keep showing up in the world just as God purposed you to do, because you being you is exactly what we all need.